hot players, which are legit, which are not. Who are we holding? Who are we folding? Who are we trading? We'll talk tons of players, tons of strategy with SiriusXM's Sky Dombrokse. That's all coming up next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. What a Mets victory today, down 4-0 from the Cubbies, and came back. A couple of really good defensive plays. Starling Marte throwing out runners at the plate, and the Mets winning it, down one, but coming back and winning it in extra innings. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I really think that baseball should have an afternoon game every day of the week. This way, when people are at work, they have something to be distracted with. That's just my opinion.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, we've got a great show for tonight. We did our cold start episode last week, but we got to talk about the hot players. And to join us, we've got a great guest, Sky Dombrokse. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys. Good to be back.
Absolutely. So much fun talking with you last year, and great chat we had earlier today, and figured let's just continue the good fun for everybody. But wanted to catch up with you a little bit. You are literally crushing everybody in Tout Wars so far in our head-to-head league. What's your secret here?
My secret is I have 19 more points than you. 19.
Oh, is that just it?
That is just it.
So it's one of these situations where, it's the head-to-head format, and even though I've got like the second or third most points of anybody, I'm like in 7th place because I happen to play you, beat me, and I happen to lose by 6 points on 2 different weeks already.
You and I talked about this earlier, man. I love this format. It just is more exciting, but I get the people that, because these years happen, right? You play a lot of head-to-head. What's happening to you right now happens a lot, where you just poor fortune. You've got a great team. Everybody knows it, but things just don't go your way early.
Which is why I hate these types of things, because you can do well all year. You can finish in first and second place, have 1 or 2 bad weeks of playoff time, and then your whole season's down the drain. I can't stand that.
There are many who think the way you do, definitely. I'm such a competitive person. I love the sort of in-your-face, week-to-week, starting over nature of it. And I know that it's against the, quote, expert mentality to think that way. But, hey, I think how I think.
So with head-to-head, versus a season-long thing, whatever format you do season-long, you get the excitement each and every week when you drill down. So, I lost by 6 points, but it was exciting. Came down to the last game, and I'm like, all right, Dansby Swanson gets a double or 2 doubles and a homer or whatever. All right, then I win. If the other guy strikes out, okay. So you're cheering for something every single end of the week. And if let's say you're in a rut, you start out bad, well, you can start over. You make a trade, immediately that person has the effect. So I get the nature. Problem is that it's very variable. Now, this year in Tout Wars, Greg Jewett and I petitioned, and we got this change. Instead of just having, you play one opponent, you also play the median. So at least you get something if you had a really good week but got slaughtered by the top team or something.
Well, yeah, I think it was critical to do that. And obviously, anytime you can sort of level out the luck factor, the good fortune or poor fortune, probably is a positive thing, right? But I'm glad you did it for your sake, because you'd be like 0-4 or 1-3 with the second or third most points in the league. Give me a break.
I know. And you still have the playoff thing. Even though we're doing this, still in the playoffs, you have to win that week. I mean, I was telling you earlier today that last year I had my absolute best game of the week in the semifinals of the playoffs, but Greg Jewett just blew it out of the water. And, if I happened to play a different opponent that week, I would have won the whole thing. But listen, that's what it is. It makes it more exciting. People who love this kind of format, great. If you love the season long, to you. The one thing I will say, though, is that a little bit of complaint about the NFBC, and there's so many injuries going around. I really am not enjoying, and I never did, but I'm not enjoying this year, the no IL. And I know that people will say, well, there's more skill, there's more strategy. You have to know when to drop somebody. I don't buy that. I think it's just more luck. If you have a top guy that's injured, now you have to decide whether you have to drop somebody. I mean, you should be given something to compensate for the fact that you have an unlucky outcome, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, look at this year. Like, starting pitching is like walking through a minefield, and there will be people that just somehow escape unscathed and have no pitching injuries. So why would you reward them for what is essentially good fortune? I refuse to believe that you can predict what pitchers will get hurt and which ones will not. I don't think that's a thing. So
Well,
why reward luck?
I actually did predict Spencer Strider getting hurt. I predicted that last November, I believe. But yeah, no, you're 100% right, and it just makes the game such a downer because the season is so long, and to make these decisions now in April, like let's say you don't know if guy's going to come back in 2 months. Like if you have Francisco Alvarez and you have a roster crunch and you need somebody, are you going to hold on for 2 months? Are you going to hold on to Mike Trout for a couple weeks? They said he'll be back this year. You don't know. You have to make these decisions now in April. That's going to affect you for the rest of the season. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So when is Mike Trout coming back? Does anybody know? Does Mike Trout know when he's coming back right now?
Well, technically, according to his surgery, if it's just a meniscus tear, he could be back technically in 5 weeks. That's the best scenario. A month to 5 weeks is when a meniscus tear, surgery. That if that's just it, and that's it. But he is injury prone. If you're injury prone, those 5 weeks may be a little bit longer. He may have some setbacks. You never know. But because he's so injury prone, the Angels had to come out and say that he's coming back this year, which is just insane.
In Rouvain, it's repair versus replace, right? Or repair versus complete takeout. And I don't
Yes.
think, do we know yet which it is?
No, but I mean, if he wants to continue playing, if they take out completely, he's going to be basically on an arthritic knee for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
So I really don't think they're going to take out and replace. It's highly unlikely to do that. They'll probably just trim the meniscus a little bit, and then he should be good to go. Which is why that's the shorter surgery. And if he has replaced, then he's basically done he would be done for the year.
So if you have a couple of injuries on your NFBC roster, and Mike Trout goes down, you now have to decide whether I keep Mike Trout or not, or throw away a potential, because you have to replace him in your active lineup, right? You're not taking a zero. You have to throw away a potential dart that you've picked up early in the season or that you've drafted that maybe can pan out. You have to now choose whether to keep an injured guy or a dart. I don't really see that as a strategy thing, or if it is a strategy thing, I think it's completely outweighed by the luck factor of having your guy actually go down. And yes, you can make the point, well, Mike Trout, we know he was injury prone, blah, blah, blah. But there's so many people who get injured who are just not. If somebody's hit by a foul ball in the wrist and breaks their wrist, and that's not an injury prone thing, that's a fluke. I just don't buy the critics of why IL is so bad. And if you want to say, well, it's just too deep a roster, okay, so play a 14-team game instead of a 15-team game, or take out a bench spot and make it a couple of IL. Like, there's ways to correct it, and there was ways to get to the right pool and the level of depth of your league. But taking out the luck aspect of it, or trying to minimize it, I think is much more important than saying, oh, it's a strategy thing.
I 100% agree with you. And yes, it's a strategy. It is a strategy that I don't want to participate in.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And we do play NFBC, we play in all the formats, but I don't enjoy that aspect of it. It's not a mock on the NFBC guys. Do a great job. We're happy to play in it. Oh yeah, but I just don't. I don't like that type of format. I enjoy having IL.
But if baseball can change the rules after playing the same game for so many years, NFBC can change their rules also. It's just a matter of willing to buck the trend, and right now they're just staunch, believers, and they want to just keep it the way it is.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess so. Let's talk hot player starts, because we've got a lot of players to talk about. But before we get into the actual players, Sky, what metrics do you use when you're checking out? Oh, is this guy's hot? Is he for real? Is he simply lucky? What metrics do you delve into when making your intelligent decisions on what you should do with the player and how you feel about the player?
Well, I mean, the first and easiest one for hitters is BABIP. I mean, that was probably the first one that we ever looked at and started thinking about, there's a lot of fortune involved with BABIP, and how much do pitchers control, how much do hitters control, et cetera. That's where it started, and I think I still use that quite a bit. I love the augmentation with the StatCast data that's included on Fangraphs now. I think that gives you a really good idea. It combines launch angle and exit velocity and all that stuff to kind of determine how well a player should be hitting versus how well they're actually hitting. So I definitely use that stuff for hitters. And for pitchers, you're looking at stuff like XFIP and Sierra, and also exit velocity allowed, StatCast expected. All that stuff I think is really critical to determining how real, in quotation marks, of course, a start is.
Ruvain, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I like looking at the home run to fly ball rate, both for hitters and for pitchers, to see if they're a little bit lucky when it comes to that. For pitchers, I like looking at the strand rate to see if they're keeping on men and they're not scoring runs against them as they should. And for hitters, also launch angle. I want to see, did they tweak something in the offseason and there's something different about them. One other thing about pitchers also, look at the pitch use. See if the pitch use is different this year from prior years, and you can actually learn a lot from that. If there's a huge increase or decrease of one pitch and all of a sudden they're more, their walk rate is less, that's something also you want to look for, then you can see that there's a tangible difference with this pitcher from what they were before to what they are now.
Yeah, I'll add in a couple of other things. Strikeout rate and walk rate, both on the hitters and the pitcher's side, is good. Hitters, looking at swing rates, how they're swinging in the zone, out of the zone, their contact rates. For pitchers, you want to look at their swinging strike rate, if that really is, if you're buying into their strikeout rate. How about just pitcher velocity, just to see, is it something increased, is it not, is it, things like that can add to it. The thing is that when we're talking about the cold starts, there's always the question of, is it real? Is it the guy injured? You don't exactly have that on the hot player side, right? If a guy is performing well, you're not going to think he's injured. But you could actually think, what? Is this his true talent level? Was he injured the prior year? Guy, you ever think in that context actually last year was the abnormal one. This one is the real one.
Oh, no question. Yes, 100%. I think that, you saw that with Taylor Ward last year, right?
That was just the guy I was thinking of.
I figured, because I know we've talked about him. Yeah, I mean, he's just one example of many where I think, guys will try to play through. Like Joe Ryan is an example, if you want to go on the other side of the ball. Joe Ryan last year tried to pitch through a groin injury for like 5 starts. And I think he allowed 7 homers in like 20 innings in those 5 starts. And it was just ugly, ugly, ugly. So he finally went on the IL, came back, and he was the same guy he was before he hurt his groin in the first place. So now I thought this year that probably really depressed his value artificially, because people look at his stats and they're not kind of taking into account that month that he tried to pitch through things that he shouldn't have.
And to build on that, projections, a lot of it is based on historical, right? And if you're looking at last year and the year before and, the numbers are down because historically, players might under-project. How much do you factor when you're looking at projections, preseason, it's based on some of the bad years where he was injured, don't believe it. Does that factor into your analysis?
It does, especially if it's pretty recent for me. Like the Joe Ryan thing was a perfect example. I have a lot of shares of him this year because I went through the game data and then I read some articles and I was like, man, I mean, just throw that month out. That shouldn't count at all. And I think that does happen quite a bit. And, obviously we, like many things that we hear about athletes, we probably know 10 to 20% of the 100% of stuff that's going on.
And I think you could throw out the stuff that you hear about players in the offseason and say, oh, yeah, I did try to play through this. Oh, yeah, I did try to play through that. Like Jonah Heim, he had an injury, and his team was good, and he came back maybe too early from his injury. You have Pete Alonso, who played through a wrist injury, and Francisco Lindor played through it. He needed surgery in his elbow. I mean, these guys, they play through it. They try to tough it out, and sometimes when the quote-unquote the team needs them, they try to put themselves first. They don't put their body first, and sometimes it affects the numbers, and you don't find out about it until your season's already over.
You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see, especially for pitchers, show me their stats from last year without their worst start and without their best start. You obviously have to compensate that way. It'd be funny to see what the numbers do for players if you throw out their worst and best. Because often, one bad start could be any kind of weird reason. Doesn't really tell the story for a player. If anybody knows of a site that has that kind of statistic, that would be interesting to me, by the way. But I want to ask Ruvain this. Who do you believe more when you see hot starts? Do you believe in the hot starts of pitchers or hitters more? Obviously, it's case by case, but in general, which do you believe more?
I usually believe the pitchers more because usually the pitchers you have you have a better idea who of what's going on. You have more of let's say they're pitching 40, 50, 60 innings. It's you get more data and you're able to see more as to what's going on. A lot of the pitchers and we're going to be discussing them. A lot of the pitchers are more veteran type pitchers, so they have a track record. A lot of the hitters who are off the hot starts, a lot of them their track records aren't that great or their track records don't match what they're doing, and there's something makes you want to scratch your head. But you've seen bits and pieces of for pitchers that are off the hot starts this year that have put it together in the past. They just haven't put it together for a full season. So I typically believe at this point for the hot starts for the pitchers.
Ooh, do you disagree, Sky?
I don't disagree one bit. I think
Really? Okay.
pitchers find stuff more often. All of a sudden the guy's got a new wrinkle, or he starts throwing a cutter, or like Kevin Gausman just started throwing a splitter a lot 5 or 6 years ago, and it totally rejuvenated his career. I think that Ruvain's exactly right. I think pitchers find stuff. I think that a hot start is much more applicable moving forward for a pitcher than a hitter, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, of course, pitchers, I didn't mention before, but if they change the pitch mix, that could be a factor. I guess I generally believe the hitters more than the pitchers, but again, it is case-by-case basis. If you go through and see pitchers and you can point to something and say, no, this guy's different, I guess, yes, I would trust that more, but in general, without doing the deep dives, I think that pitchers, tend to be lucky. You have 3 good starts, or you play against the White Sox twice to start the season, your numbers will look pretty good. I would trust, at this point in the season, which is about a month in, I would actually trust hitter starts a little bit more. Talking about Fab, when you see these players, now most of these hot guys could be already on teams, but if they're a little bit lower level and, 10-team league, 12-team league, and, they were just waiver fodder originally, question is, how much do you spend on Fab for them, and how quickly would you act, Sky?
Boy, I mean, the leagues that we play in primarily, you got to act quickly, and you have to spend kind of probably more than you would prefer to if you want to ensure that you get them. And I think, when you look at these guys, you're going to have some level of confidence, and that's going to be different for every single player we're talking about. One guy you look at and you say, all right, well, because he's doing this and this and that, in addition to having the hot start, my confidence level is like a 9 out of 10 on him. So early in the season, I mean, you may go 100, 150, 200 just to try to ensure that you get that guy in your roster. But if it's just a run-of-the-mill hot streak and you think, well, I want to ride this, I want to get in on it, so then you're talking, well, I'll throw a 10 or 15 bid, and if I get lucky and slide him through, great. But I'm not going to invest a ton into it.
Yeah, I think the bigger question for me is not the should I pick him up quick. I think the bigger question is, I have guys on my team already. How quick do I cut them? And it's not always a clear case about, oh, this guy is the real deal. Well, my guy, I thought he was good preseason, but let's bail on him. I think the opportunity cost is the bigger question to me. And, of course, you want the lower spend. So if you do act quicker, you will spend a lower amount. Ruven?
But it's also a matter of how deep a dive you do on the player. If you look at the player and you think that the hot start is for real, then you should spend more Fab on it. If you don't think it's for real, like you see, oh, maybe he's a little lucky, maybe the pitcher's a little lucky, maybe the hitter's a little lucky, then you have to consider, is he going to be worth it? If I spend that amount of money, is he going to be playing the rest of the season for me at or close to that level or right below it? What did I think what he was going to do before the season? What is he doing now? And if he regresses back to the mean, how much of that regression am I going to have to absorb? So that's a couple of things you got to think about when you're actually putting Fab bids in for these guys.
What about trading for a hot player? Obviously, you want to trade, you want to buy low, sell high, but have you ever traded for a hot player? You saw a guy outperforming, and you know what? I think it's legit. Let me trade for him now. Ever do that?
I've done it before, and I think you kind of got to jump early. Obviously, you're looking at cost and prevailing cost. But there's always 3 costs, right, to any player when you're talking about, comparative with other teams and things like that, looking for trades. There's what the other person values them as. There's what you value them as. And then there's what the market values them as. So if your value that you're placing on a player is higher than the other 2, then by all means, go. And I think I've definitely done it, but usually it's pretty early in the hot streak where I convince myself it's real for whatever reason at the time.
And Ruvain, on the flip side, what about you have a guy who's hot? You probably think maybe he's, it's a hot streak, it'll just be cold. But, of course, the market has to believe that. How long does a prolonged hot streak have to really be for you to say, hey, guys, I'm dangling this guy. Do you want to trade for this really hot guy?
If the hot streak's a couple of weeks, 2, 3 weeks, and you have a lot of holes in your roster, I put them up on the market right away. Let everyone know that this person's available because they can fill multiple holes possibly for 2, 3 weeks of really good weeks. And you know what? That may be worth it in the long run. You may be able to fill a couple of roster spots via trade as opposed to having to sift through the fab market. And it just seems like a smarter, a more better idea. Just be able to try to sell at the high instead of buying at the high. If you buy at the high, you are going to get that regression in whatever you get. If you sell at the high, you know what? Is he going to get that much better? Is Alec Bohm going to be that much better that it's worth it to be in my roster, or is he maybe worth trading for a mid-level pitcher and a closer, something like that? You may want to sell high now and get as much as you can.
So, in terms of active versus bench, because you're playing a hot player, you're going to play him. Question is, Sky, how long do you keep rolling with hot players in your active lineup versus sitting them? I assume for a hitter, you're just going to keep playing him on and on and on as he's hot. You have to determine, of course, when he's cooled off. But for a pitcher, maybe it's different because if a guy is lucky, he can, especially in a roto league, and you've got to, when he comes into that start where he hits the wall and it's 7 earned runs, ouch, you've pretty much given up all of your good ratios from your from when he was hot, and now you're back to even or even worse sometimes. What do you do with players who are hot in terms of rolling them on and on in your active lineup?
Well, let's talk about pitchers first because you were just mentioning that, and it is such a high standard deviation there that it's problematic. You don't want to miss that one on the wrong side. So I tend to just play matchups with my pitchers and look at the schedule, look at the park factor, and guys can work their way into, they'll get a little more latitude from me, but you're not going to see a fifth starter. I don't care how hot he is. I'm not going to pitch him in Coors Field. I'm probably not going to pitch him in Atlanta. I'm not going to pitch him against a top 5 offense on the road. So I think that it's more on that side for me that I'm going to lean with what I think the pitcher really is versus whatever the streak is.
Do you disagree, Ruvain?
No, I agree with the pitching aspect and with the hitting aspect. I think you just roll them until they cool down. I mean, if they've given you a 325 or between a 325 and 340 average with a couple of home runs, stolen bases, those stolen bases or home runs don't come off your team stats. And when you have the batting average, if it comes back to the mean a little bit, that's perfectly fine. You don't expect this guy to hit 340 for the whole season or something like that. So I think you have to just roll with the hitters for as long as possible. If you start to see a decline and you see that, let's say they go 0 for 8 or 0 for 9 and their swing looks bad over the weekend, then yes, you can sit them for a week and see if they can recover from it. But otherwise, play the hot hitter as long as you got them.
And the one thing I'll add to that, of course, is if you're in a weekly, like a head-to-head league points or even categories, I would even go with the pitcher and keep going because then they're not erasing what you've done the past couple of weeks. So you flub that one particular week. If at all, but they're not losing the prior ratio, right? If you're running to a wall in a whole season league, ouch, then you're negating. But if you're not, then you might as well, you can take a chance and keep going with them. So, on the hitter's side, the pitcher is pretty clear if a guy is cold. You see him flub and have a crappy outing. But on the hitter's side, a guy starts at the year, he's batting 340. Well, you don't really check it because you're checking his year-to-date stats. Suddenly it's 320. Suddenly it's 300. It's 280. 280 still looks like he's having a good season, but the truth of the matter is he was hot for a week, and now he's cooled. How do you know when to pull the trigger to say, all right, I'm going to bench this dude?
Well, I mean, that's like the famous Supreme Court case about the definition of pornography, right? Justice Potter Stewart says, I don't know how to actually define it, but I know it when I see it. So I think that's how I would play that. I mean, you know if a guy's been ice cold for 10 to 14 days, it may be time to sit him if you have viable alternatives.
Yeah, that's why looking at like prior 14 days is a good thing. By the way, that whole Supreme Court justice thing, I actually remember that from my calculus class, from a math class in college, where they said, what is the definition of a tangent? Well, I can't say what it is, but I know it when I see it. I'm sorry, the professor. A tangent is like pornography. You'll know it when you see it. All right.
Well, bring it back to baseball here. Anthony Rizzo last year, he was great until he had that collision at first base. Then all of a sudden, for 2 weeks, he was literally ice cold. He was scorching hot to start the season. He had that little incident, then he was ice cold. Me and you, we had him in one of our teams. I think we kept him on our active roster for like maybe a week too long, and it really affected our batting average because he was like for the week at one point. And just because he has a name, just because he has a reputation, doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep the hot guy in the lineup. If you think that there's something going on there, even if he has a name attached to him, a famous name, you still should bench him if someone else is hot and on your bench.
Yeah, it's tricky. With Rizzo, of course, you could point to the actual injury or collision. You know, that was something we should have all been on a little bit faster. But it's not easy because these guys go, oh well, anyone could have a cold day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Well, the team wasn't on it, so we could be forgiven, right?
Right. That's also true.
That's true.
Also true. Good point. All right, let's talk some individual players because there's going to be some lessons learned in each, and I'm going to start it off with a player that. Well, I just say that season's not over, but it's pretty much going to be an L in terms of Ellie De La Cruz. I'm the guy who said, second round, you're crazy for taking him because the dude could end up in the minors. You never know. Of course, that was before we learned about all the Reds' injuries. But, you can't, okay, maybe in the third, fourth round, I guess, but second round, you're giving up such draft capital. And look at him, he's slashing 280, 389, 579 with 9 homers and 18 stolen bases. My God. Now, his strikeout rate is still high in the 30s, but he's got a 14% walk rate, so he's getting on. The BABIP, yes, it's propping up the batting average, but you would expect with Ellie De La Cruz a high BABIP, so it's a little bit over. He's the number 2 player on the Razzball player rater right now at $53. Total L for me. My question, obviously, we all know what we're going to do with Ellie De La Cruz. We're going to play him every stinking day. The question I have with him is, was the logic that we had earlier this season is you're crazy to draft him in the second round? Was that just, good process, wrong results, or was there something in there that we were just wrong about that? Yeah, we should have known the guy was going to steal 60 bases, and the guy's going to hit 20 homers, and the batting average won't suck. There's no way he's not going to be in the lineup at any day. But was it a bad process at any point, or did we have... do we do it right, or is this wrong?
I think one of the strengths for me personally is understanding when I do things incorrectly and beating myself up about them forever. I don't think that was a mistake. I mean, what we're seeing is essentially the ceiling performance, right? Like this is the best that we all thought he could do this. We just didn't think that he would do this. And the fact that there was a zero floor. And there was a zero floor. He could have been horrible in the minors by May 1st. There is no question that could have happened. So, no, the process wasn't incorrect. He's giving you ceiling performance. And he's doing something that I absolutely love to see from a young player. His chase rate's down 6%. His in-zone swing percentage is up 2%. So he's learning to recognize what pitches he can do damage on and which ones he cannot. The contact is always going to be an issue with him, but that's fine because it gives you so much everywhere else. He's given you a ceiling performance. He is still a low floor player. He's probably now, if you redrafted right now, sure. I think you look at what he's doing, you say, oh yeah, I'm in the second round, sure, okay. But I don't think the process was incorrect at all.
All right. Ruvain, agree? Did we have the process right or wrong here?
I think the process is right. I think we may end up taking the L on this for the entire season, but let's see how long he goes with this. Remember, when he first came up, his first month in the season last year in June, in 88 at-bats, he batted .307 with 3 homers and 9 stolen bases. So we've seen him do that, but then we saw him get into bad habits. Now, if he's trained himself to keep out of those bad habits, then he can continue what he's doing for the rest of the season. But until I see another month or two the way he's going like this, then I'll be a believer. Because again, he seemed to have gotten into such bad habits last year that the bottom just kept falling out. Let's see how he does. He's done this for 1 month. He's only his second year in the majors. Let's see how he does the second month, the third month, when baseball pitchers start changing how they attack him, start changing the way they pitch to him. Maybe they start pitching him out of the zone, or they walk him more, or pitch around him because for whatever reason they don't want anything to do with him. Let's see how things go. But at this point, yes, we're going to take the L in it. But remember what he did last year. He did it for 1 month and then just dropped off. So let's see how his patterns continue.
Yeah, so it's a capital L loss now, but maybe it'll change into a lowercase L. It's going to be an L no matter what.
Yes.
I will point out though that the L is on not drafting him, and he's performing well. The far worse L would be as if, we were all over a guy and we drafted him in the second round and he was a flub. Like, that's a much worse problem to have than I just missed out on Ellie De La Cruz, right?
Well, there's the famous adage, right? I mean, you can't win a league in the first couple rounds, but you can lose it.
Yeah.
So I subscribe to that, and that's why Ali De La Cruz was just not likely to end up on any of my teams. I got him on one, but I think he slid to the fourth there. So
Slid to the fourth.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice job with that. The other question, Ellie De La Cruz, is if you have him, is this a trading opportunity now? While his value is never going to be higher than this, or I'm not going to say never, but not much higher than this. Or is this a guy that you just say, I'm getting my 70 steals, I just roll with him, especially in roto leagues? Or is this a trading opportunity?
Well, I guess by the definition of the way I do things, if I'm thinking that this is a ceiling level performance from him right now, by the nature of that, I must shop him, right? I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to trade him, but I have to see what I could get.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
100%. There's no reason why you can't listen to offers. If you're blown away by something and your team, you have, let's say, a bunch of injured pitchers, and then you're offered like a number one pitcher or a number two pitcher and a solid bat, that's hard to turn down, even though you're getting what you're getting from him right now.
So, very similar to Ellie De La Cruz, C.J. Abrams is having a fantastic year. 7 homers, 7 steals so far, batting .284. He's a $34 player to date. I opposed drafting him, not as much for the talent, more the profile risk, because most of his value I thought was contained in stolen bases, although his power is backing up. I mean, last year, he was a 94 WRC plus batter. That's not good at all. This year he's 163. So it wasn't all dumbfounded last year why I wasn't interested in him, but definitely take a loss. Sky, any thoughts on C.J. Abrams? Is there anything to point that maybe we should have been on before?
Well, I think when you look at guys that they're clearly making a little bit of strides in some of the problem areas of their game, like Abrams, even in Double A, there was some contact issues, right? And for a guy that was primarily a speed player, we thought, and really still is, when you start seeing those contact issues dissipate, more times on base equals more stolen base opportunities, and I think we probably should have been paying attention to the fact that he kind of steadily improved all through 2022 and during the year last year in terms of contact rate, and he's done it again this year, despite the fact that he is still inordinately aggressive as a hitter with a 44% chase rate. It's more than I'd like to see from him, and so I think there are further potential gains to be had, which is frankly a little amazing to me. But the power numbers are a little more than I think you should expect from him. His exit velocity, it's up to almost average this year. He might peak at above average power, but this whole idea that C.J. Abrams is a 35 home run hitter, I'm still not buying. I think he's a great player, and I'm impressed with the changes he's made. But let's be real. I mean, the guy has kind of average, maybe average plus power.
I'm more impressed with the batting average. We know the power is going to regress, but let's go to Ruven on this one first. Marcell Ozuna, slashing .321, .403, .624, currently 9 home runs. I think he leads the NL right now. Well, he had 40 homers last year, so the power is not a surprise, and we know the batting average will regress a tad. He's a .270 lifetime hitter, and his BABIP right now is at .340, so we know that. But are we believing this hot start that this is a really elite player, as he's done this kind of thing before in his past?
Yes, 100%. I think this is sustainable, not the batting average part, but the power part. I mean, his BABIP is a little high. He's in the 338 right now, but his home run to fly ball rate is the same as last year. His walk rate is up. His K rate is down. All the other peripherals are the same, and he hit a bunch of home runs last year and played very well. And he's turning into what I think is like similar to what David Ortiz turned into toward the end of his career when he was a designated hitter. Sometimes he played once in a blue moon to play the field. outfield if the Braves have to have him do that, and he'll play. Ozuna will play the outfield if he really has to, but he's a liability out there. But he was mainly a DH guy who during draft season people were scared of taking because he would quote unquote clog up your DH. And you know what? He's turning into the David Ortiz type that doesn't not only clog up your DH, but is a bargain where people got him, and where people got him, they're getting so much value out of him. It's crazy.
Yeah, he was. However you slice it, he was undervalued this year. I mean, maybe the DH was a factor of the discount, as we've seen, as you mentioned. But either way, we knew he was going to be a discount. Obviously, he's blown it more than there. Any reason to think otherwise, Sky, or we locked in on Ozuna is just a good player?
No, I think that's a cool comp from Rouvain, honestly. I think the David Ortiz thing is good, except, and I have to pay homage to my main man, Lou Blasi here, and invoke Blasi's law of contract years. If you look at Marcell Ozuna's career, essentially the only time that he played really well was when money was on the line. And I hate saying that, there are coincidences, but he is a clear example of a player that plays extremely well when everything is on the line for him. And that's why I was kind of surprised he played well last year, because this is the contract year with the club option for next year. This year, I figured he'd be great.
Well, maybe a team should only sign him for 1 year deal.
Wouldn't that be the thing?
Yeah. I want to go to Tyler O'Neill, who's slashing 304, 415, 658, a WRC plus of 194, 9 homers, although only 12 RBIs, so he feels like he's A-Rod. Well, we've seen him do this back in 2021. He almost went 35-15. Looks like this 30 homer pace is probably sustainable. Now, he's at a 30% homer to fly ball rate. He's not a 50 homer pace, but with a good start, he could end up with 35, maybe more, maybe. Strikeout rate is actually under his career level. Walk rate up, so the batting average that we projected preseason of 250 probably is on the low side here. Is this someone that we're buying? Is this someone that you're trading at the height, or hey, he's just gonna end up with 40 homers and let's go with him, Ruven?
I am selling here. This is a guy that I'm going to read these numbers, and these are the important numbers. 61, 60, 50, 138, 96, 72, and so far 22. Those are games played per year since 2018. That's not good. He has a history of getting hurt. He is very similar to what Byron Buxton could be. You're seeing...
Oh, don't say that.
Well, you know what? It's very similar. They can't stay on the field. He already had dealt with a concussion already this year. You don't know when it's going to happen, but the way he plays the outfield, this is a guy. He's batting 304. He has those home runs. He has everything going. This is a guy you sell high because you don't know when the wheels are going to fall off.
Agree, Sky?
For the most part, I do. He seems excessively hot. Like the way that he hits the ball with the massive fly ball rates and above average pull percentage, just not likely to sustain this kind of batting average. I think I would have said before that his 2021 season of 286 would be his peak batting average of his career. He's just not designed to be an average hitter. The power is pretty legit. I mean, he's got, sort of above average or average plus exit velocity. But when you use the massive fly ball pull strategy of hitting with that exit velocity, you're going to get a lot of home runs. I love the fact that the contact gains that he had during his injuries the last couple of years, but you could see that he was making more contact, making a conscious effort for that. They've continued and actually gone a little further this year. So I like that. And people are looking at the lack of steals so far. His sprint speed still 61st percentile, so he has above average speed. I think if he wanted to run some more, he probably could. He'd probably give you 10 steals. But Rouvain is exactly right. What's the likelihood that he gets 450 plate appearances? I think it's like 1 out of 3, maybe.
Do you think that the change in park has really helped them? And if so, that obviously is a reason for continue. Aside from him, is going to get through the season, the continued success if it's because of the park.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it definitely has. His patience, his plate discipline has continued to expand. The contact rates continue to expand. Like, he's making real gains as a player. But overriding all of that is exactly what Rouvain said with, guys like him with the types of things that he misses games for. Like we talked about earlier, guys that get hit by pitches or they run into walls or whatever. Like, okay, that happens. You can't really say that a player's injury prone for that stuff. But guys that pull hamstrings, guys that have knee soreness, rib cage cartilage tear, stuff like that. Like that is injury prone, and that's what he is.
And former Cardinals like Randy Rosarino, Adolis Garcia seem to be thriving when they leave St. Louis, whatever
Amazing,
it may
right?
be. It's maybe it's their the way they're teaching the hitters. It seems like St. Louis is drafting the right player, but it may be that their philosophy is a little bit off, where they're just missing unlocking the full potential for these players.
Mike Trout just got injured, but you could also make the case that, hey, we should sell Mike Trout. He hit 10 homers, leads the American League. Can't get much more out of this guy. I mean, would any of you said 5 days ago trade Mike Trout?
Well, I don't know, Ruvain. What do you think? I probably
Be
would have,
honest
to be
here.
honest. I would have said the same thing. I think that, I love, and these are players I love. Like, I love Tyler O'Neill. I love the way he plays. I really like him as a player. And I'm a Yankee fan. But, I love Mike Trout as a player too. But, what are the odds? You try to play what is likely to happen, not what you hope would happen.
Well, if I had a spot on my roster and I would make a trade, I still think I'd probably trade for Mike Trout than I would for Tyler O'Neill. They may end up playing the same amount of games, but track record tells me that Mike Trout will still have better numbers in the end than Tyler O'Neill. I'm not going to say that Tyler O'Neill is going to play less games or more games than Mike Trout, but if I know that Mike Trout's only going to be out for about 5 weeks and he's going to come back and be Mike Trout, I'll take that over the unknown of Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, so the difference between the two, obviously, is that Tyler O'Neill, you question the playing time. You also question whether he can sustain this. Is this his true talent? Mike Trout, if he's on the field, he's Mike Trout. There's no question about his talent. The question is whether he's going to stay healthy. So the two are different. I understand that. I mean, would there have been a market for Mike Trout like 5 days ago? If I said, okay, guys, who wants Mike Trout? I mean, what would you get for him in a trade?
I would think there would have been a market. Why would there not? I mean, everybody agrees with you that when Mike Trout plays, Mike Trout is Mike Trout. So I'm sure someone would take the gamble, because I think we all in the back of our minds were like, he's going to have one more year where he plays 150 games and hits like 50 homers, and he looks like the Hall of Famer that we all know he is.
And
Right.
it's ironic that he hurts his knee when he tries to steal more bases again. That's
Which he
you're seeing
was,
the
yeah.
full Mike Trout on display, and then he gets hurt. Not necessarily doing what he was, stealing bases, but he added that aspect back to his game, and all of a sudden you're excited, like, oh, wait a second, maybe I have a fifth-round player that's going to be first-round talent here. You never know.
I wonder what the conversation is from the Angels organization before the year. Mike Trout is like, hey, guys, I want to steal more bases this year, but, you probably shouldn't because your knee. No. I'm good. I'm just going to steal bases. I can. No, I don't know. And then now he gets hurt. They saying, we told you so, Mike? Like, what's the conversation going on in L.A.?
I think if they said, I told you, Mike, that would be gross mismanagement of clearly the face of your franchise. So I think they're probably just sitting there like, I told him not to do this.
Yeah. I mean, he's not going to steal ever again, right?
Well, I think when he comes back, he will maybe put the brakes on stealing a little bit more and use more of his power, because as players get older, they tend to steal less anyway. So the fact that he's trying to have the resurgence in stolen bases, it's not really his quote unquote forte at this point in his career. He should mainly concentrate on staying healthy, staying on the field, and producing with his bat.
All right, let's talk Colton Cowser, batting .288, 6 homers, 3 steals. He's got that 33% strikeout rate, though. His BABIP is sky high at .378. Homer to fly ball right now at 37%. His ground ball rate is pretty much about 50%. Is this can you trade now? I mean, I'm basically telling you that I think this is a little bit of a mirage, and his value will go down. Is this a guy you can trade now? Do you not agree with me that he's just a little bit hot and this is not for real? Thoughts, Guy?
I so rarely disagree with you. And I won't even call this disagreement, but I think it's mostly legitimate.
Okay.
I mean, this kid has had a lot of contact issues through the minors. They're intermittent. I think that there's talent here, and he's only 24, still on the good side of the development curve. But the power is absolutely legitimate. And he's had sort of adjustment issues at every level as we went through the last couple seasons. Like high A, he didn't perform too well, but the Orioles decided they liked what they saw, and they moved him to double A, where he was just lights out. So then they sent him up to triple A, and he really struggled there too. So they've sent him back there for most of last season, and he was fantastic. So they bring him to the majors, and he really struggled in 77 plate appearances last year. But for him to come up this year and do this, I'm not surprised. I picked him up everywhere I could as soon as I saw he was playing more than I expected.
Interesting. What do you have rest of season homers for him?
If he plays as much as he's playing now, that's the biggest problem with all of the Orioles, right?
Sure.
Is there are so many mouths to feed, and there are more in the minors just waiting. So it's amazing. I'm so amazed by that organization, and I've got a couple buddies that are just huge Orioles fans, and I kept telling them while they were losing 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I'm like, look, man, you are going to be so excited in 2 to 3 years. Trust me, you're going to be so excited, and they are now because, I mean, this kid, I think another 20, easy.
Oh wow. Okay.
If
Moving.
if he gets the playing time, Austin
Yep.
Hayes is on a rehab assignment. He's going to be back soon. There is going to be a crunch out there in the outfield. Kowser in the last week has batted 188. Now he's still stealing, but like you said, because there's so many prospects out there, just for the Orioles, that he may have a shorter leash because the Orioles are going for it this year. The Orioles are in first place. They're going for it. If one of their young guys gets into a slump, they're going to try to put another young guy in there and try to play, just play the hot hand. They played Kowser's hot hand already. He's cooled down a little bit. The league is catching up to him again. So the question is, will he figure it out? Are they going to have to send him down to figure it out at some point because they're just so deep? That may happen. And what happens if you have him on your roster and they send him down? Are you going to drop him? Is someone going to pick him up right after you drop him? It's not only whether or not you think they're worthy to be traded, but if they start to decrease a little bit, their value starts to decrease, and they end up going to the minors, do you end up dropping him or do you have to hold him and waste a roster spot for him?
Yeah, that's a very big question, what you do in that kind of case. So it makes him an interesting case, and obviously we'll follow him over the next month to see which direction he's going. Go to you first, Ruvain, on this guy, and I won't say much other than Bryce Terang currently has 14 stolen bases, batting .309. Is this for real? What can you expect, Ruvain?
Yes, I think what you're seeing now is real. His BABIP is a little high, but speed plays. In the minors, he's had 30 plus stolen base seasons almost every year he was in the minors. So the speed is real. If you're having for stolen bases, that's what you have him for. You're not expecting a sky high average. If he ends up hitting 260, 270, but gets on base and steals bases, that's what you have him on your team for. So I think speed plays. The speed is real, and as long as he gets on base, he's able to produce.
Sky, of course, not a play on words on sky over here. But what are your thoughts on Bryce Terang?
I actually really like Bryce Terang as a player. I don't think that there's going to be ever more than average power here. In fact, I'd even be surprised if he got to average because while he has average raw power, just the method that he uses to hit the ball, a lot of ground balls and line drives instead of fly balls, just isn't going to be conducive to big home run totals. I think you're probably looking at a 10 to 15 cap for him, and he's only 24. But the speed's absolutely legitimate. He's top 10 sprint speed, I believe, in the entire league. He is really fast, and he's very good defensively, which buys you playing time, as we know. I think the average is a little more legitimate than a lot of other people think. I think that all the preseason prognostications at 240 to 250, I was surprised to see those. I expected more in the 260 to 270 range. He was fairly consistently a 280 to 300 hitter in the minor leagues coming up. And he's a pretty patient guy at the plate, too. He has a good approach. Chase rate's off 7% to 23% this year. It's well better than average. And he is a great contact hitter, obviously, at an 88% contact rate. So I think you add all that stuff together, and I see a hitter that will not be a hurt in average at all and is likely to be a help. And the steals are huge, obviously.
Yeah, he's a guy that I took projections and I sort of bumped him up on my own intuition. He had a great spring training, and I was just hearing reports from camp that he's the guy on the team to watch this year. Like, I hope at least two different sources where, oh, this guy stand out, this guy's going to be something. And the preseason projections of 20 stolen bases, he might get more than 20 stolen bases from here on in.
Yeah, right.
The batting average is gonna, we're gonna regress a little bit, but that 250 preseason level that we thought, that's just not right. His strikeout rate this year is at 14%, and he's got almost a 10% walk rate. So, we're talking closer to, I'm going to say 260, 270, just to mix in the batting average from here on in. But the stolen bases are going to be there. So whatever you bought from him early on in the season, you're getting quite a lot more. It's going to be a 40 to 50 stolen base guy, potentially by the year's end. I own him in just some deep leagues. I mean, I don't think I have him in any 12 or 15 team leagues, but I do own him a little bit deeper, and definitely glad that I have. So Let's move on to Alec Bohm. Alec Bohm, as you know, has been on our list every single of the last 2 years for absolutely undervalued, can't miss bargain, and absolutely right. He's a $34 player to date. Now, his a 362 batting average currently won't continue, but we've said on the show that he's a 270 to 280 hitter, and that's totally true. I mean, his strikeout rate over the last 3 years below 17% is just continuing. His home run pace so far has been about 20 to 25 homers for the year. Again, one of the guys where ATC projections had 15 to 20 homers, but we said he's actually more like 20 to 25 on our own intuition, and it looks like we were right. He was absolutely a steal in every single league. I think this is just going to continue, minus the batting average, not being a 362. It'll be you can take what we projected preseason, which was a fantastic value, and he's a great value for the rest of the year. He's a hold. I wouldn't trade this guy. I don't know if you're going to get more than what. You're probably not going to get more than what he's worth, so you hold him, and he's just going to be great. Any differences, Sky?
Well, I think we spend a lot of time focusing sometimes on players what they are not, and we want, when we see a guy as a corner player, first and third, like Bohm, and he's just coming into his own, he's in a bandbox of a hitter's park, and we're thinking, oh, why isn't this guy a 30 home run hitter? And he doesn't run, he has no speed. Alec Bohm is a preternaturally good contact hitter. Like I said 2 years ago that I thought he was going to be a future batting champion in the National League. He is an excellent contact hitter that continues to get better. His approach at the plate keeps getting better all the time. I actually wrote down in my notes when we talked about him 3 weeks ago on our show, I was like, I think 320, 100 is well within reach for Alec Bohm. He's not going to give you steals, sure, but he's a great hitter. And this is age 27 season, so, that's still a thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have him in Tout Wars. Yay!
Oh, good for you.
I actually have him in a lot of leagues. I have him maybe like 60% of my leagues. One of my most rostered players. Thank goodness.
Awesome.
Yeah. Ruvain.
Yeah, I saw a tweet, and I had to mention this. Ryan Spader tweeted this. Alec Bohm is batting 500 with an OPS of 1.372 over his last 14 games played. To put that into perspective, he wrote that Barry Bonds maintained an OPS of 1.373 over a 583 game span. So some people consider Barry Bonds one of the greatest hitters of all time. Alec Bohm is going through a stretch right now where he is just unbelievable. He's a guy that, like you all mentioned already, he is good for the rest of the year. I would not trade him. I would hold him. If you're in a keeper league, definitely hold him. Even if you get a decent offer, he plays third base. Third base was supposed to be one of the shallower areas in draft season, so I would definitely keep Bohm, and I just keep riding him for as long as he's hot.
Scott, you alluded to Taylor Ward earlier in the episode. $30. He was the number one biggest bargain this offseason, according to ATC, for outfielders. Obviously, we didn't predict this kind of season so far, but I kind of think he's more legit than not. This is a hold situation for me. Anything different that you see?
No, Taylor Ward's a guy, like I actually picked up in most of my longer-term leagues while he was still in the minors. And really, obviously, depressing year last year with getting hit in the face and all the commensurate attempts to come back and still be confident after that. You always wonder. But he's come back with a bang. And I love, again, I know this isn't a young player doing this. He's 30. But chase rate is off 5.5%. In-zone swing rate is up 6%. He's been more aggressive, highest swing percentage of his career, and absolutely paying dividends. I think that's what gives you the career high exit velocity of close to 92. He's just finally picking pitches that he can do the most damage with, and he's doing it. If you look at the StatCast expected data, he's actually underperforming all of it by quite a bit. So I think Taylor Ward's really having a great year, and while it might not continue quite to this level, I think most of it's totally legitimate. I like him as a player. I think he's absolutely a hold.
Yep, absolutely. And before we do our next player, it's time for trivia with the Injury Guru's Trivia of the Week.
Well, you mentioned earlier in the show about Starling Marte. We're going to be talking about Starling Marte now. So my trivia question relates to him. Today, Marte had 2 outfield assists, but the quirky thing about it is that the 2 outfield assists happened both in extra innings. This feat of having 2 outfield assists in one game in extra innings has only happened twice in the last 17 years. Do you think you can even Think about who did them. I'm going to give you a hint because it is kind of hard. The first hint is that one of the players was actually in today's Mets Cubs game, and the other player used to play for one of these teams and the Montreal Expos.
Scott, any thoughts?
I mean, it sounds like Cliffy Floyd maybe to me.
No, that's a good guess, but no. Same time frame for and same team, so it wasn't Expo used to be on the Met. The one who did it 17 years ago. 17 years ago in 2006, Endy Chavez did it June 4th of 2006, and Ian Happ did it last year against the
Really?
Brewers.
Wow.
Which is a very interesting feat. But what I'm getting to here is that Starling Marte threw two people out at home plate. He is healthy, and that's the main thing. Last year, he's one of those guys who played through injury, and his stats showed it. He's healthy now. His BABIP is close to his career BABIP. His home run to fly ball rate is the highest of his career, and it shows that he's actually healthy. You're getting a healthy Starling Marte, and you didn't have to pay that much to get him. If he can remain healthy and keep this going, there's no reason why he couldn't. I mean, he did it in 2022. He had a very good, very exceptional year. He was batting second in the lineup for most of the year. He kills lefties in a lineup that can't hit lefties. So he has so much going for him when he's healthy. The question is, will he stay that way?
And by the way, we had Sarah Sanchez on last week's episode. Maybe she gets the Ian Happ answer. I mean,
maybe
It could happen.
Maybe there's no way. I mean, you usually, Ruben, you give us no hints before. You just tell me, Ariel, trivia by this, So I cue it up, but you're like, Ariel, you're not gonna get the trivia today. Okay.
Yeah, it's very obscure, but it's proven the point that he's healthy, and same thing like with Tyler O'Neill. If they're healthy when they play, they can give you great value, but you don't know when they're going to fall apart. Remember, Starling Marte is 35.
Yeah, and even not healthy the last couple of years, he's still stolen bases. He's been not very productive, but somewhat productive. But he's really going back to this is what he's done, for his career. Right now, he has 4 homers, 6 stolen bases, batting .278. It's vintage Starling Marte, and we all saw him going into the year saying this guy looks healthy. Everyone from camp, this guy looks healthy. I mean, to be honest, if he's healthy, then this is for real, totally. Question is, will he stay healthy? I don't have an answer to will he stay healthy. I guess, like the other players, can we expect him to play all season? Probably not. Will he get a couple of planned rests? I guess. But yeah, he's legit in terms of skill. I believe it for sure. Sky?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same deal, like you just mentioned. You can't expect him to play more than 120 games, I don't think. But last year was such a weirdly fluky, he definitely played through injury year. He never has that low of a batting average. Even though he's not a great contact hitter, he does well when he makes contact generally. And I think especially this year, you're seeing that where he's got the best X velocity of his career by multiple miles an hour. He's on pace to have a year which would probably be even with the best years of his career. 2025 maybe, and he's hitting back close to 280. I think that might even be on the low side a little bit for him. So yeah, I like Starling Marte very much. He's generally speaking my favorite kind of player. He's either good or hurt.
Finally, a Met who's actually performing well. we'll take it. Let's move on to a couple of other players. Last two that we're going to do. Isaac Paredes, 7 homers, 291 to date. Are you believing this guy?
Well, I didn't believe it last year, so more fool me, I suppose, right? Isaac Paredes is one of those guys, I know exit velocity is not the end-all, be-all, but it gives you a pretty good idea of just how much latitude a player has if they start missing the ball a little bit on whether they can still hit home runs or not. And last year, Isaac Paredes had a 230 expected average and a 369 expected slugging, outperformed by 20 and 120 points respectively. And this year, the gap is even greater. He's at 291 and 509 with essentially the same StatCast data. Exit velocity of 86, multiple standard deviations below the norm in the league. Has a huge launch angle, 50% fly balls, almost 50% pull percentage. Generally leads to a very low batting average. Not in this case so far this year. But he's only 25, and he's shown the ability to do this for almost 2 full seasons now. He has 58 homers over his last 280 games. So, who am I to say he can't do it? He's doing it. So I think he's a 30 home run hitter. I think the average is very suspect. I would be a sell high on Isaac Paredes as much as I do think that he's just better than I've ever given him credit for.
I agree. Don't have much to add, Ruben.
Yeah, I totally agree with this also. Plus, he's in a position, he's playing third, that, he has that position for now. The Rays do have some guys that may be coming up soon that may push him around, push him around the diamond just a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. But I think he's pretty, and his defense is not bad. So for the Rays, that means he's going to play.
Last hitter, I should say, Brandon Marsh. I was actually very high on him preseason. Definitely own him on some teams. I thought him as a 15-15 type player. He's well exceeded that right now in terms of the pace, but he's got a 30% homer to fly ball ratio. That strikeout rate is still over 30%, so that will limit his batting average. I think there's regression. I would actually bet on whatever I had preseason, which was better than the market. So he's not this hot, but we're talking, 15-team league. He should be a starting outfielder. 12-team league, not. That's how I would play him rest of the season. Any thoughts, Guy?
I'm a little more optimistic, I think, than you are. Well, the thing is you don't see a lot of guys with average chase rates and above average swing, better than average swing strike rates. You don't see a lot of those types of players have K percentages over 30%. So it just seems really high to me. Like, he's made a lot of strides in contact. He's a tremendous line drive hitter, above 20% every year of his career, above 25 this year, which definitely leads to a high batting average. The exit velocity just continues to improve from average to above average to borderline elite this year at 94. Hard hit percentage of 61%. I mean, the guy's on fire, and it looks mostly justifiable to me. Like, if he's 25-15 at the end of the year with a 270 batting average, I would not be one bit surprised.
You said 25-50 or 15?
15.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
the low one.
Yeah. Well, because of the hot start, I definitely think he's going to get to something like that. I think going forward, I would pretty much, 15-15 type pace for me, which, basically I'm taking my preseason expectation, which was higher than the market, and bumping up a little bit. Still, I'm still cautious about him. He does play in a very good park, though, so of course he's going to be helped out a lot.
Good park,
I like
good
him.
park, and good lineup, and expecting batting average is higher than his current batting average. So you're going to get a little bit more than you anticipated when you drafted him.
All right, we got to talk pitchers here. We won't do as many pitchers as we did hitters, but gotta mention Shota Imanaga. Now, my bold prediction before the season started was Shota Imanaga out-earns Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So far, doesn't look very bold. $37 so far earned by Imanaga, $17 by Yamamoto. Before I give the rest of my take on this one, Sky, what do you see out of Imanaga so far? Is he an elite pitcher? Is he a very good pitcher? You're not. What are you doing? You're not? Are you trading high? Are you keeping? What are we doing with Imanaga?
I would probably be in the sell high camp here. I don't think that he's bad at all. I think that he was very undervalued. His control is phenomenal. I think that he is very deceptive. Quality contact's kind of average. My concern here is the same concern that I generally have with most pitchers in Wrigley. Once you get to summer and those winds change and it's hot out, this is a dude that throws like almost 50% fly balls. And he pitches with a relatively mediocre fastball with quite a bit of movement at the top of the zone. And I think that the combination of garbage Midwest weather early this year and the fact that there wasn't a lot of tape on him and he's unfamiliar to hitters, and the fact that he is actually a lot better than people thought, like the combination of those three things has led to this really, really exceptional start. But if you asked me if I would trade him straight up for Yamamoto right now, I would. I would prefer Yamamoto rest of season.
Okay, Ruvain, your take?
He's got a 92-mile-an-hour fastball. He's got an 83-mile-an-hour split. Those two things, just the difference between those two pitches is one of the reasons why he's just doing so well. My issue is that he's playing in the U.S. now. He's going to be traveling more. He may hit some bumps in the road. His innings are going to go up. You're going to see they want to skip him here and there, like the Mets did with Kodai Senga last year, or to go into a 6-man rotation, spread him out a little bit because they don't want to wear him down. He's good now. The weather is good, just like Sky said. The weather is good. So yeah, Sky said the weather is good. That's great. The weather is favorable for pitchers right now. So he's taking full advantage of that. When the weather changes, is that going to change when he starts traveling across the country and having West Coast trips, East Coast trips, and pitching more innings than he ever did before? Then we'll see what we're going to get out of him. But I think the Cubs are going to. Because the Cubs are going to be in the race for most of the season, they're going to be, near the top of the NL Central. I think they're going to try to protect him. I think they may skip him a start here or two just to, quote unquote, slow him down a little bit, just because they don't want to overuse him too much. Because Kodai Senga, when he came last year, he started off very poorly. He was all over the place. It's the complete opposite of what Imanaga is doing right now. And Imanaga figured it out quicker than Kodai Senga, but Senga also did hit a little bit of a wall. He did have a couple times when he only went 5 innings and couldn't get out because he was walking everybody. Let's see how he does when he travels more and the weather changes.
Well, I think this is very good analysis here. The fly ball issue at Wrigley in the summer, that is a very, very important key to understand, which probably means you can probably roll with him for a little while and just be cautious of him. The question about regression is always regress to what? He's got a 3.02 SIERA right now. The question is what to do. I would trade him for Yamamoto. I do think Yamamoto is the better pitcher. Obviously, my bold prediction was meant to indicate that it was much closer than you'd think. Yamamoto's going to have a lot of variability and risk, and so did Imanaga, and so things could happen. It's so funny, but we talked about preseason. Like I'll give you the Zips. I'll give you the preseason projections by projection system on Fangraphs. Zips 3.55 ERA, Steamer 3.84, ATC 3.88, the Bat 4.54. Just all over the place here. And, truly, it could be. We don't know. The one thing I'd say, though, is I'm a little bit higher than him on you guys, I think, is that we didn't know how he would respond. We didn't know would he figure it out or not. Well, and I'm not saying it's binary, but I think it's way one more than the other. I think he's figured it out, and I don't have that downside of, this guy is a 4.5 ERA type guy. I don't have that. Whether he's a 3 ERA guy or a high 3 ERA guy, that remains to be seen, but I think the outcomes are shifted quite a bit more than I thought preseason. I just don't see that downside because he can do it. We've seen that he's doing it. And he did it in Japan. He was actually really good last year. And he looks fairly durable also, which is important. So I'm more of a believer than not in Shota Imanaga. And obviously if you can get a great trade out of him, great. I'm not selling all that fast, though. Move on to Ranger Suarez. Number 1 player on the pitcher radar so far. $42 pitcher. 1.32 ERA, .63 whip. 40 strikeouts in 41 innings. He's got 5 wins, which is propping up his value. Of course, a 189 BABIP. That's not sustainable. Could be double for all you know. 92% strand rate. That's not going to sustain. His ground ball rate is up to 61. That's way up from his career norm of 54. I don't know how much of that is real or not. But he is showing better strikeouts, and he's showing more from the level of a couple of years ago when he was awesome in 2021. How much are you buying Ranger Suarez for this year, Sky?
Well, Ranger Suarez, it's not even just a question of him. Like, I'm so high on the entire Philly rotation right now. Why are they messing around with Taijuan Walker? You're going to put Spencer Turnbull away somewhere? He's been great, and bring back a guy who perpetually is the definition of a below-average starter. So anyway, Ranger Suarez has been really good, and the strength of it is so much on the control improvement and the massive ground ball rate. He's definitely, as you stated before, he's been very, very fortunate so far. The BABIP is ridiculously low, the strain rate's ridiculously high. That stuff will regress, always does. But he's actually done something that I think I've seen a few more pitchers do this year than I've ever seen before, where they've actually reduced velocity. They're not throwing at 100% max effort like we see with so many guys. And they've been so much more successful. The control is tremendously better. The exit velocity allowed, I'm not sure I've ever seen a starting pitcher allow under an 82 mile an hour exit velocity on average. It's just abnormally low. But he's still missing bats. He's actually gone back to about league average with a much better than league average chase rate. So he's been very deceptive despite reduced velocity. I think he's great. I really think that, obviously this level of performance should be beyond him on a long-term basis. But if he put up a 3 ERA, low 3s ERA the rest of the way, I would not be very surprised.
So what was wrong last year? He had a 1.42 WHIP, and the year before a 1.33 WHIP. What was wrong last year? What has he figured out?
Health. He started off the year. He wasn't healthy. He wasn't his full self. And now that he's healthy and he's figured out how to pitch instead of throw, he's doing better. But that's the question, his health. He's never thrown more than 155 innings in a season. So if you think he's going to throw 160, 170 innings at the same level, that's probably not going to happen. But if he continues to have only one walk per 9 innings like Imanaga, then he can have close to what he's having now, but not the same. It's just too lucky right now. He's going to stay healthy because he's throwing not as hard. The velocity is down, which is great. And if he continues that ground ball rate, that infield in Philadelphia is a lot better than other infields, like let's say in for the Dodgers or something like that. If he was a 60% ground ball rate with the Dodgers, he would be a lot more unlucky. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, the statue of Max Muncy trying to field stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do a bit of name game with him. Who would you rather have rest of the season, Yamamoto or Suarez?
Yamamoto.
Gilbert? Logan Gilbert?
Gilbert.
All right. Blake Snell?
Suarez.
Okay, I agree.
Don't
more on the
think
Snell
about
side
that.
than anything. Freddie Peralta?
Peralta.
Strikeouts.
I agree so far. Joe Ryan?
That one's really close for me. I would equate them completely.
Suarez for me.
I think I would do Joe Ryan. What about Grayson Rodriguez?
Suarez.
Grayson is on the IL with a shoulder issue.
Okay, right. Yeah, that was recent. Yep. Justin Steele, he's coming back.
They're very similar pitchers. I'm going to go Steele on the pedigree.
Yes, agree.
Okay, so this is about the range where Suarez would be, and we're talking like a preseason draft of like a mid to high teens is really where we're valuing him. So
I got him as an SP3 right now, I think, towards the bottom end of that, for me.
It's probably even higher than that, actually, with all the injuries and stuff.
Well, yeah, yes.
Yeah,
right.
So, okay.
I forget about those somehow.
And Imanaga, is he close to this, or he's a tad lower, though, still?
I actually think it might be a tad higher.
Probably higher.
What do you think, Ruvain?
Yeah, probably higher.
Imanaga or Suarez?
I think Imanaga, but it is close.
It's close because Suarez may have a longer shelf life while Imanaga may not. We don't know yet. He's only pitched 1 month in the majors. He's still an unknown.
Okay, so how about this guy? Talking about another guy off to a high start, Jose Berrios. Now, when I was looking at the numbers for him, 97% strand rate, 2.29 BABIP, a 1.44 ERA, but his Sierra is 4.3, and his homer to fly ball rate is 9%, which is actually low, right? So he's not unlucky, or he's not particularly lucky. Hard contact rate is up to 36% from 31 last year. His strikeout rate is actually down to 18%, which is down from last year. Walk rate is up. I mean, this looks like a sell, can't get rid of him quicker guy. Am I wrong about Jose Berrios?
No, this is a Jim Cramer moment here. I mean, the only good thing is the ground ball rate going up to 47%. He's been a magician as far as both he and whatever relievers follow him, but him alone. He's been very, very fortunate. I think Berrios is the same guy that he's been the last 2 years. He's going to eat innings. He's about as reliable. He and Logan Webb, aren't they the two guys you'd think are least likely to get hurt, in my mind?
Yeah, probably.
So, those two guys, and this is something, you and I talked about injuries earlier, but we didn't talk about how to change values of pitchers. I think Logan Webb is incredibly valuable because of if anybody's not going to get hurt, it's probably him. And I feel the same way about Berrios. He's not the same caliber of pitcher, but he's a 4 ERA guy. He's league average, and ostensibly that's a good offense if they ever figure out a hitting coach that could work there. He's fine, but he's way outperforming what he should be expected to do the rest of the way.
Yeah, totally, totally. What about Nick Lodolo? Nick Lodolo having a great year. It's only been 4 starts though for him, so it's hard to say. He's been a little bit lucky on the homers and BABIP. The 1.88 ERA will come up, but he's had a good pedigree coming in. I was optimistic on him. Obviously, the injury is the issue. Let's start with Ruvain. Any injury concern with him? Is that a big factor for you?
No, but I think it's the same issue as playing in Chicago. He's going to be playing in Cincinnati. That's what I looked at right away when I said Lodol's doing well. How many home games did he have? How many road games did he have so far? And has he played the White Sox? So he's had 2 home games, 2 road games, and he played the White Sox once. So you're seeing. I mean, his expected ERA is supposed to be around 4.8 right now. So he has been lucky. But that K rate is at the level where he was last year. So you're not going to get that 6 ERA with those 9 strikeouts every time out. But he's gonna regress back to where his quote unquote normal should be. And remember, he is still playing in Cincinnati. The weather's going to get warmer. The balls are going to fly out. His home run to fly ball rate of 5%. That's not going to stay in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's funny how part of your analysis, he already played the White Sox. I feel like for all these guys, you have to check, wait a minute, was one of those outings against the White Sox? Sky, are we buying Nick Lodolo? Are we selling him while he's high for the 4 starts, or just let it go?
I like him. I think that we were sort of lulled into undervaluing him in the offseason due to a combination of factors. Number one, the biggest thing was the injury, which that's what got me to, I don't really want to touch him unless he really slides. But then there's also the 6.30 ERA last year with an xFIP of 3.80. That's a really large gap in luck. And that's the thing, is he's been about as lucky this year as he was unlucky last year. So the truth lies obviously somewhere in the middle, like it usually does. Is Lodolo a better than 4 ERA pitcher the rest of the way? In my mind, he is. I think that his bat missing ability is fantastic, schedule notwithstanding. And his control has continued to improve every year. So I really feel like he's a good, solid mid-rotation guy. But he's not a guy that I'd be starting all the time because of the aforementioned weather issues and park issues that Ruvain talked about in Cincy. It's the same deal as Wrigley and a bunch of the other little bandbox parks. As soon as it warms up, the ball starts flying, and you just need to be careful who you're deploying him against.
Yeah, 10-team matchup play. 15-team, though, I think you're starting him every time.
Oh,
right? Yeah. How about Reed Garrett for another I love it when there's success stories on the Mets. I just do. Reed Garrett has been the best relief pitcher in baseball. I mean, he's vulturing wins for fantasy, striking out 45% of the batters. He looks better than Edwin Diaz. And the Mets even had him save a game or so. He absolutely looks legit. Ruvain, is this going to be a guy that, he's going to be injured because he's doing too good? Or we're talking about one of the better high leverage, setup men in baseball here?
I think it's one of the best setup men. If you don't own him already and if he's available in the leagues, I think you should grab him because he's a lot better than a lot of those number 5 starters that are out there. But the main thing that jumped off the page when I looked at him on Fangraphs was his usage of pitches. Last year, he used a split 23% of the time. He's using it 23% of the time now. He used to use it 14%. His fastball is down from 45% to 23%. He's using his split more. He's using his slider more. He said already in the offseason he changed his grip on the splitter, so he's throwing it a little bit differently. So I think that he figured something out. How long it'll last, that's a question because, he wasn't this great when he was with Washington. This is almost an out of nowhere story. So the question is he going to be legit the rest of the year? Is the league going to figure him out? Are they going to wait on that split? Are they going to, is he going to change? Is he going to regress to the pitcher that he was? I mean, he's not a starter. He only needs 2 or 3 pitches, and that split has been ridiculous.
Yeah, and what I like about him is that he goes multiple innings at a time. So they have no problem with him with a little bit more length. And I don't watch video on all the players, especially relief pitchers, but as a Met fan, I'm watching him. Oh, that ball moves so well. And if Adam Ottavino can be effective with his great horizontal moving slider, Reed Garrett looks really, really, really good. I just have a good feeling about him. Question to you, Sky, is in what formats are you picking him up and streaming when you have bad outings for your starters, and what's the usage of him for you in leagues with depth size?
Man, it's going to be totally based on your league's structure because I'm thinking of I think I have 8 leagues going right now. That's a lot for me with my schedule, but I wouldn't use him at all in a couple leagues. If holds are valued at all, he's a must-have. In points leagues where you're going to use X number of starters and X number of relievers, I think he's a must-own. One of my issues, though, is like we talked about, Ruvain talked about the pitch mix, and you're at, 77% slider and splitter. I do worry about the arm health, especially if he's going to be pitching multiple innings and getting to closers are max effort for 20, 30 pitches. He's going to be pitching more like 40, 50 pitches. If he's going max effort, I wonder about his ability to last the whole season with that pitch mix. The slider's probably the single worst pitch on somebody's elbow. So that concerns me a little. But I think he needs to be owned in most formats right now.
Yeah, and, you didn't really put a lot of draft capital around, and actually nobody put any draft capital. So, if he breaks in the middle of the season in terms of fantasy, and it is what it is, as a Met fan, I surely hope that doesn't happen. Yeah, that's the only concern, but I think he's very effective when he is here. Just a couple more pitchers to talk about. Eric Fetty. He looks like a different pitcher. He went to the KBO, and he looks like a different guy. The K rate is it's matching what he had in the KBO. A little bit lucky, but his Sierra is right now at 319. Problem, of course, in fantasy is that he pitches for the White Sox. So, he's not going to get a lot of wins. We're talking about deepest leagues, but he looks semi-legit, or is he? Is this a mirage? Sky, are any interest in Eric Fetty?
I don't have a ton of interest outside of him being a streamer. I mean, the pitch mix is totally different, and the K rate has been great so far, but he's not really missing a lot of bats. Swinging strike rate is still far below average, so I expect that K rate to come down quite a bit. Control, obviously, like I said, a lot better, but he does allow a lot of fly balls. And again, we're talking Midwest. Weather's been bad. It's going to get better. It's going to be better hitting conditions. He is rather hittable. I mean, he's a 4-pitch guy, and he uses all of them about 20 to 30%, which is nice. So he's a little bit deceptive as far as that goes. And the addition of the splitter is cool. I just don't have a ton of faith here. I think I'd be selling high.
Okay. Any disagreement, Ruvain?
The only thing I'd say about him is that if you are going to stream him, he does play in a division that's not the best in baseball. The NL Central is not. The AL Central is not that great, so he will have some streaming opportunities. But he's going to be like a 3 or 4 for rest of season as a starter. I'd have to really pick and choose where I play him. I don't have much confidence. I saw him pitch when he was with Washington, and I understand he changed when he went over to Korea, and I get that. But from what I've seen before, I just can't get those other images out of my head.
I think the probability that he's on the waiver wire now in your league, and that he will be, given that he's on the waiver wire league in your league right now, that he will return to the waiver wire is probably very great. That's what I'm going to say about him. So use that as you may. 2 more pitchers to talk about. Zach Littell. Is this an example of another Tampa Bay change success guy? Well, what do you think, Sky? Is Littell going to throw 165 innings at this level? He's actually down in velocity. Is this an example of another guy who's showing success with a reduced velocity? Or what's your faith in Littell?
I really think it is. He's the second one that I was kind of referencing when I said that earlier. But again, this is a guy that I think his maximum innings that he's ever thrown in a season is 165, and that was almost a decade ago. So to expect him to go the entire season and pitch at this level, which I think this level is achievable. Tampa Bay just continues to manufacture pitchers out of nothing. They've got 17 pitchers on the IL, and they still have a really good ERA because that's just what they do. I have a ton of faith in their pitching part of their coaching staff. Maybe not in keeping people healthy, but in terms of performance. And, he's not a big guy in terms of like high ground ball rate or avoiding exit velocity. He's sort of average in those areas. But one of the things that we've been focusing on with Fantastics this year in particular is control. And the fewer guys that you can put on base, and it's not just because of the power that people show in the modern game, but the increase in stolen bases the last few years. You just want to keep guys off first base. So you see Littell, like so many starts of his, 6 innings, 7 singles allowed, no walks, 5 Ks. I think you're going to see a lot of that all year long with him. He's fine. I had him as my fifth starter in just about every single format that I'm in, and I'm holding. I think he's absolutely fine. I just don't think there's a market for him, so selling high doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing how Tampa Bay does this. I am concerned about the innings, though. Tampa, in general, tries to stop pitchers from pitching late into games. So and the Tampa's not fantastic this year. So wins, I'm not too high on. And will he go the whole season? I don't think so. But like a use him while he's going, I'm totally fine with that, unless you're playing really bad matchups. Any other thoughts, Ruven?
Yeah, I think for me, he's really a matchup guy. If I think the Rays are due for a win or the hitting is hot, I think he's a guy that I put in there. I'm not too high on him, like you got just for everything you already mentioned. He only threw about 100 and change innings last year. So if you think you're gonna get 150 innings out of him, that's not gonna happen. Yes, the Rays will stretch him out. He probably will end up getting a couple of saves down the road because that's just the way the Rays work. So you never know. But I mean, you someone who has such a small track record of so many innings per season, it's hard to have so much faith in him the rest of the season.
All right. Does anybody know who leads in qualified pitchers, who leads the majors in K minus BB right now?
Is it the next guy?
It's the next guy, our final guy, Jack Flaherty. Oh boy. I mean, usually when you want to look at pitchers and the very quickest metric of, hey, is this guy doing great? You just look at K minus BB. 31%. He's got a 34 K rate to 3% walk rate. Does anybody know who number 2 is? Anybody know 2?
Is it gonna be Imanaga?
No, I'll give you a hint. NL Central. Rookie. Jared Jones.
Yes.
We could talk about him too. I mean, I love what I see out of Jared Jones, and that's not hot. I think that's him. But Jack Flaherty, question health, question innings. I mean, he showed a very high level at some point in his career. There's going to be regression. Sierra, though, says not that much. I don't know what to do with Flaherty. I guess I would sell high if anybody would buy, but I also sell high because I don't know if he's going to last all year, and is Detroit really that good to get wins? But that 31%, that just screams that he's doing great. I don't know. Any thoughts about Flaherty?
I'm buying, man. Absolutely. Like, he's been really unlucky so far with a 4 ERA. He's got an xFIP of 215. The thing that gets me here is, like, I'm skeptical of the control. He's never shown, I mean, average at best control, and all of a sudden now he's walked 5 guys in 36 innings. Like, where did this come from? He's a poor control guy most of the time. So that's what I'm skeptical about. If he continues to show this level of control, he is going to be fantastic because he has great stuff. He always has.
And he's playing on a 1-year contract right now. So he's 28 years old. He's turning 29. He's in the quote unquote prime of his career. So he's pitching for his livelihood at this point. So there's, maybe he figured something out. Just like other pitchers, they stop throwing the ball and they start pitching the ball and scratch that. They stop throwing the ball and they learn how to pitch the ball and they hit their spots and know that they don't have to throw 100 miles an hour every single time. So he may be one of those guys. And also remember, he has never been healthy for long stretches of time recently. So the fact that he's healthy now, and he's in the NL Central, the weather, it's a combination of everything we've mentioned with the other pitchers.
It's funny, but your point about NL Central is really good. And I'm looking at the list here. K-BB, of the top 7 pitchers, all but one come from a Central team. If you're pitching against crappier teams, you're going to do better. It's not a bad idea to zero in on that. Detroit has 2, Skubal and Flaherty. You got Joe Ryan in the top there. Garrett Crochet is in there. Freddie Peralta.
And take a look at former Met Seth Lugo. Look what he's done. He's also done amazing. His velocity has decreased. His K rate's down. His walk is the same, but his strand rate is good because he's playing in a division that's just not that great.
Yeah. So aside from wins, if wins is not that big in your league, the NL Central pitchers are really, really interesting this year, is the take that I get out of this. Let's do waiver wire. I guess we can do. It's getting late. We'll do waiver wire and pitcher preview all together. Just who we picking up, pitchers, hitters this year. You could do 10-team, 12-team, 15-team. We leave it all up to you, Sky. Who are a couple guys that you might be interested on the waiver wire this week?
I don't want to steal your guy, so I'll leave him for you, the guy coming up this weekend. But
Steal guys. Oh, you talking about the Met coming up?
Yeah. I'm looking at Joey Loperfido, Tyler Black, Tommy Pham. I mean, those are guys that I'm targeting this weekend. I think that in the case of the former two, you've got some prospects with power and average/power ability, respectively. I'm really high on Tyler Black. I expect a very large series of bids from me this week there. And Tommy Pham is a guy that he's been a hobby horse of mine for a long time. Like Tommy Pham has perpetually had sort of worse raw performances than all the underlying data would suggest. And he's going to that abysmal organization that we've mentioned numerous times today, the White Sox. The good part about going to terrible teams is if you're an okay player, you probably are going to get a lot of playing time. And Tommy Pham has the ability to be a five category player. He just hasn't shown it very often in his career. He may be more of a bit part at this time, but I still think there's something in the tank. I will probably take a few chances on him this weekend.
So you're talking about Christian Scott? Is the
I was mentioning him. I thought you'd want to talk about him.
Well, I don't really pick up rookies in general. I like to see. Hard for me to recommend Mets prospects. That's just unheard of.
Mets rookie pitching prospects beat that.
Yeah.
Pulsifer, Isringhausen, Wilson, come on.
One thing about Tommy Pham, I'll say, and listening to the Launch Angle podcast and Rob Silver making the point that Tommy Pham couldn't get a job on any other team other than signing late with the White Sox. What does that tell you about him? It's an interesting point. Yeah, I think Pham will be interesting if you're in a deeper league. Sure, and he's available. I mean, he was on all my waiver wire lists last week as well. So for sure, but he definitely won't have what he did last year. I mean, that to me is just out of the question. But definitely good pick, and he should be owned at this point in leagues. Ruvain, what about you? A couple guys?
Yeah, I got a couple guys. First, I'm going to mention Jacob Young. He's only 36% owned in CBS. He's a stolen base guy. He has a history of it. He had 52 stolen bases over a couple levels in 2022 and in 2023 as well. So he's a guy, if you need stolen bases, he's got a 56% ground ball rate, which means he's hitting the ball on the ground using his speed. And with Lane Thomas, Victor Robles, and Joey Gallo all out, he's going to get playing time, and then that's outfield. Another guy who's getting playing time because of injury issues is Jordan Beck in Colorado. Last year in the minors, he went 25-20. This year already has 5 homers and batting over 300 in the minors. With Nolan Jones out, Chris Bryant out, he's going to get playing time. Another guy who's not up yet but should be on people's radar is a guy we saw in Arizona, Kyle Manzardo. He's batting in the minors 323 with 8 home runs. The problem is that he plays mainly first base, and Josh Naylor is sort of blocking him there. But the DH right now for the Indians is Estevan Florial, who's not, he's struggling just a little bit. So there's a possibility there may be room for Kyle Manzardo. So that's something to watch for. And one pitcher I want to mention is Emerson Hancock. He's a possible to start next week at Minnesota and against Oakland. He's only 21% owned in CBS. He'll get you a bunch of strikeouts, and he's pitching against Bailey Ober, Alex Wood. Not great guys. So those are some guys you may want to think about.
I'll mention a couple guys. Ryan Jeffers, usually don't talk about catchers, but if you're in a one-catcher league, he now seems interesting. Batting 300 with 5 homers, 19 RBIs. Ryan Jeffers worth thinking about in one-catcher leagues. Mike Tauchman in deeper leagues, he's still staying relevant. Slashing 295, 427, 500, 3 homers and a stolen base. He's getting the job done. So if you're searching for an outfield replacement in a deeper league, look no further. Yenier Cano might be the time to grab now. Didn't get the first save op with Kimbrel a little bit hurt, but we know what he can do. I'd pick him up. I already own him in a bunch of leagues, even just as a middle reliever, so you might want to there. I do want to mention a couple of pitchers. Bryce Elder as a start versus the Mets. I mean, I guess the Mets are good this year, sort of. They're above 500, but that good ballpark, that might be interesting. Dean Kramer had a great year last year, especially in points leagues. I think he's a really interesting guy to own. Keaton Wynn, He is playing. He's really pitching well. He's playing Colorado. It's at Colorado, but might still be interesting before the weather really heats up. Then he is against the Dodgers next week, but then he's 2 start the following week, so might have some good matchups. Keaton win, and a couple of pitchers just to be on the radar coming back soon or even now. John Means and Kyle Bradish, they are back now. If they are somehow available in your league, you should pick them up. Taj Bradley is coming back soon. Pick him up now. That's very interesting. And I don't know, if you want to take a big dart, Alek Manoah, he looked good in his last rehab start. Again, this is a big dart. But if your team is struggling and you have an open spot, what the hell? Who the hell knows? Maybe, just maybe, Alek Manoah will be something worth it just for the risk. Anyone else, Guy, to mention for this week?
I think you've about exhausted what I had for this week, and then you went one further with Manoah. Oh man, that guy is brutal. Maybe Jordan Beck. I know he's looked bad in his first couple starts, but Colorado, they need bodies. They need some people up there that are going to excite the dormant fan base. So I think that anybody that's going to play in Coors Field, this was a rough week. I think they're on the road all week. This is a rough week for him to debut, but I think they've got some home games coming up, and I think that Jordan Beck has a ton of potential in that outfield.
Hey, for Manoah, how many starts? You're obviously not going to play him his first outing when he comes up, obviously. How many starts do you have to see something decent out of him for you to put him in your lineup?
2.
Okay.
I go 3 or 4, but by then he's probably picked up by somebody else. I don't want to take that risk.
Well, so I'm saying pick him up now as a dart, put him on your bench, but at some point you're gonna, he'll have 2 good starts, 3 good starts. Okay, this guy looks good. Yeah, it's about 2 or 3 for me before I use him. I think something like that.
Yeah,
sounds good. All right, Ruvain, bunch of injuries. Why don't you give us the rundown? And is Mike Trout going to come back this year really soon? I mean, we talked about him earlier. I don't know. I don't trust that he's going to come back really, really soon.
I still think it's going to be, if he does just a regular meniscal surgery, it should be five weeks hypothetically. So, keep your fingers crossed with that. But Masataka Yoshida was placed on the IL also with a left thumb strain, and now they're saying that he may require surgery. This is a guy, he has been underperforming already, who's already put into he was lefty-righty situation at this point, and he wasn't even playing that much, and now he's got a thumb issue that may require surgery. He's a guy you may want to consider dropping, actually. Grayson Rodriguez, we mentioned him, right shoulder inflammation. This came out of nowhere. He beat the Yankees on Monday. He threw 5 2/3 scoreless innings, and now he's on the IL with right shoulder inflammation. John Means was activated, so that's an interesting pickup there if he's available. You want to take a risk on him, but I think the Orioles are really playing with kid gloves right now with Grayson Rodriguez. You want to make sure that he's healthy. I want to end on a couple of positive notes here. So Brian Bello, he's making a rehab start next week. He should be ready to go by May 12th. Hopefully, Christian Javier is set to make a rehab start over the weekend, and he could be ready in a week or 2. TJ Friedel is on a rehab assignment, coming back from a fractured wrist. He could be 10 days to 2 weeks away. So those are 3 guys that if they're for some reason available, or if someone really wants to trade and they don't read the news, those are the guys to get.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. This was a good one. A lot of good strategy, a lot of good info. Always have a great time talking to Sky. Really appreciate you joining. And Sky, why don't you just tell us what's going on with you?
Well, I mean, it's the usual massive amount of work with my primary stuff. But as far as Fantistics goes, we're still hanging on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Network on the weekends from 11 to 1. Got myself and Lou Blasi and Brandon Kammerman. And obviously at InsiderBaseball.com, we've got our writers putting together about 15 to 30 different player comments to keep you up to date on everything every day. Other than that, man, thank you very much for having me. I really have a great time with you guys every time.
Oh, absolutely. Well, by Sunday tradition, this so far is this spring has been win a game of softball at 8 a.m. and then turn on Sirius XM and listen to Sky. So definitely thanks for making my Sundays all the more enjoyable. Ruvain, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter or X, or whatever you want to call it, at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out the injury updates and the stuff that I mentioned, other stuff as well. You can also catch my weekly article on Rotoboiler, which discusses all these injuries, plus more, next man up, and when you can expect them back.
And I'm Ariel Cohen. You can find my work over at Fangraphs, over at Rotoballer. And you can listen to me right here on the Beat the Shift podcast each and every week. Thank you so much once again to Sky Dombrokse for coming on the show. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.